As I think about tying my instruction to the competencies, I will begin by looking at the CASAS competencies I determined as priority competencies. Since my students are working toward gaining employment, and many struggled with competency 4.1.3 on the pretest, I will look at this competency more closely to decide the best way to address it in class. To unpack this competency, I will start by entering the content area in my unpacking chart. So, the content area is number 4, employment. This is definitely a competency area that is important to my students, because most of them have goals related to gaining employment, or improving their employment status. Under the content area, I'll write the competency area, 4.1, understand basic principles of getting a job. Next, I'll write competency statement in the first column on my chart. Identify and use sources of information about job opportunities, such as job descriptions, job ads, and online searches, and about the job market. Okay. Let's see what's next. The next column asks me to identify the skills my students will need to meet this competency. What is it I want my students to be able to do? The skills are represented by the verbs used in the competency, so I will look for some verbs. I see 2, identify and use. So, I will place identify and use in the skills column on the chart. Let's see. What's next? The column with the heading Concepts Content is asking what the learner should know, and indicates I should be looking for nouns. My first verb was identify, so just what is it that students will identify? Aha! They will identify sources of information about job opportunities, so the first entry in the Concepts Content column will be, sources of information about job opportunities. The second verb is, use. What do they use? Actually, it looks like they also use the sources of information about job opportunities. If I read the entire statement carefully, I also notice about the job market at the end. Students also identify and use sources of information about the job market, so I will write that in the Concepts Content column as well. Okay, moving on. What's next? Context. The context asks me to consider when the learner will demonstrate the skills and concepts. The context in this competency statement is very clearly stated: job descriptions, job ads, and online searches. I'll write those in the context column. Now I am ready to decide what cognitive level the students will be working on. I am looking at the verbs I have chosen for the skills column, and considering the cognitive levels of each. I think identify is a lower order thinking objective than use, so I will think about the cognitive level for using something. According to my Bloom's taxonomy level chart, when students use something, they are working at the level of apply. This seems like an appropriate level for what students will be able to do with this competency. I'm almost done. I need to confirm the unpacking of my competency before I create an activity, so I can be sure the activity supports my students' learning. Finally, I need to confirm my unpacking. I am going to cover up the text of the competency, to see if what I have included under skills, content and context represent and describe the competency. I think the words I have chosen do that, so now I will check to see if I have used words that actually appear in the competency for the skills, content and context columns. Let's see. Students will identify and use sources of information about job opportunities and the job market. I did a really good job using words from the competency statement, and since this competency listed specific examples of places to find the information, I included those in the context column, and I have linked both skills to the appropriate content or concept. I feel as if the skills and content listed for this standard are ones that instructors would expect students to meet if their class assignment was to understand the basics of getting a job. I am happy with what I have done, so now I am ready to align standards with this competency and plan an activity for my class.